Michael Malice here, and let that be your welcome for the next hour. I always say I'm excited, but this is why I'm really excited to have Justin Silver on the show. Justin's the co-host of No Disrespect here at Gas Digital with Mike Vecchio and fellow Red Eye alum. But more importantly, you are the author of The Language of Dogs. You had your own show about dog training.
Yeah, Dogs in the City on
Dogs
CBS. I don't know if that's more important because the former is current, as opposed to the latter being that show's no longer my current podcast is what is. But
you were like the hipster Cesar Millan.
You know what? Never hipster. I would go Guido.
But that, I mean, okay. Guido, but you're Jewish.
Yeah, but I'm a Jew Guido, you know?
Okay,
like
I know.
New York Mediterranean people, kind of, we all fall into the same thing.
I grew up in Bensonhurst. I know it well. I've said many times, your mic's on. I said many times the one word I was shocked that they never used on Jersey Shore was skivosa, because I grew up with that word. You don't know this?
No, I know the word. I didn't know they didn't use it.
They never used it. That's like the most common word used in Bensonhurst. You see her? She's a
They never used jabroni either.
Yeah.
Like, what? Come on.
So
But I'm excited to be here.
When Bobby pointed out that you're a dog trainer, I flipped because I was just in Bodrum, Turkey last month, and there were all these stray dogs, and I didn't understand why they were behaving like they were, and now finally have someone to answer my question. And let me explain the story.
Do you want any backstory on my history with this at all? So people are I'm not trying to host your show.
No, you know what? I don't want the backstory now. I want the answer to this question. Okay, then we'll get to the backstory. Okay. So Ricky just left, but he has all the photos. In Turkey, there are all these stray dogs. They're big. They're all big. I have never seen, but they don't have owners. They're street dogs.
Sure.
I have never seen dogs so well behaved in my life, and they were all well behaved, all of them, and to the point where they'd be sleeping in the middle of the street, they'd be sleeping by the restaurant, the bazaar. If I approached them, there's the expression, "Don't let sleeping dogs lie." We're going to get into that in a second. And what they would do is they'd wake up, slowly stand, and walk to you very calmly. Some of them I offered food. Apparently, they're so well fed they would just turn their head at pizza, but they wanted the bones. You could pet them. They weren't jumping. They weren't all excited. They were so chill. Yeah. And I did not understand how dogs that are not wild, but certainly unowned, could be so much more behaved than any dog you see with an owner on the streets of New York.
Yeah. I can answer that for you.
Yes, please.
So, first of all, dogs don't go... There's no such thing as feral dogs, really, if you think about it, because dogs are domesticated animals. We're their evolutionary niche. There's no dogs without human beings. There's wolves, and then wolves that had something called like a shorter flight response, meaning that they would allow you to come near them, and then those wolves got domesticated into whatever society, if we're talking about cavemen years ago, and they were used as alarm clocks, they were used as alarm systems to let us know when there were bears. They were used as hunting companions. They were and then they slowly became what we have is now the modern dog. So if you think about how does the culture of the people in Turkey treat these animals, those dogs are going to fall into their role there. And if the way they're treated is they're respected and they're treated with kindness and they're well fed and people aren't shooting at them and throwing cans at them, they're going to be pretty comfortable in that environment. And they still have the biology of a wolf, where they know how to sleep outside, they know how to keep themselves warm, and they have the social structure. Dogs have a social structure, I always say, which is kind of a little bit like a wolf pack, but also like a human family. And so they are going to have a hierarchy amongst their own, and everybody's just going to sort of fall into line, and that's going to change and evolve, just like, relationships here. The culture of Gas Digital has a hierarchy, if you will. So that's what you're seeing. You're just sort of seeing a four-legged culture fitting in within the two-legged culture of Turkey. Is that a good answer?
I'm not entirely, because why are dogs so much more excitable here when they meet someone, whereas there it was so cool?
Here's another great way to look at it. They are... Think about a person. Think about when a person comes to New York City and they're from Alabama. They're startled by a lot of things. The train makes them nervous. It's what they're exposed to. So you have these dogs.
They're the dogs. They're so cute.
Yeah. They're great looking.
They're so cute. I was so happy.
They're well adjusted and they're exposed to their environment. If you look at the dogs, if you look at the homeless dogs, and actually Cesar Millan used to say this all the time, and the homeless dogs in... Oh, those are great pictures, man.
It
looks like you're a guy with his dog in a bar.
Yeah, I'm a freak about dogs.
Yeah.
All animals.
Yeah, me too. All animals. But if you think about it, wait, what was the question? Where were we?
Why are
the
dogs
difference
so
is-
much more excitable
Yeah,
here?
so they're well adjusted. If you look at the homeless dogs in Los Angeles, right? And you look at people who have homeless dogs here. You ever look at homeless guys who have dogs? The dogs are sitting there, they're calm, because they're outside all day amidst those elements, and they're just well adjusted to it, as opposed to a Yorkie that lives in some Upper East Side apartment with a woman who carries her around in a handbag, and then the dog's constantly on leash all the time, and they adopt the neurosis and behaviors of their owners. So dogs are like lightning rods to their owners, or lightning rods of their owners' dysfunctions or behaviors or personalities in a lot of ways. Whatever a dog owner is, the dog is going to be a subset of that, and that's basically what it is. So you have these dogs that are well adjusted because they live on the streets. They're just not riled up by things, and it's the same thing if you see there's squatters. We're in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. You see squatters with their dogs all the time. The dogs are walking off leash. They're sitting there when the guy sits down to ask for change. The dog just sits down politely. There's dogs walking around barking at them. You never see them barking back or behaving that way because they're exposed. And that's one of the ways when you have dogs that have problems because they're being reactive to something in their environment. What you do is you want to slowly expose them to those things without putting them into what is called overflow, without them going over threshold. So if a dog is scared of trucks, for example, you wouldn't be like, well, let's go to the West Side Highway and stick you right in the middle of it. You would slowly introduce incrementally that whatever that stimulus is that's freaking them out, so they could adjust to it, and then their brain biology, their nerve cells wire and refire, so they're comfortable with it. But here you have dogs that are raised in that environment, just like if you have a kid who's raised in the city, he's adjusted to getting on the train, getting on the subway doesn't freak him out.
So you just blew my mind.
Is that a better? But does that answer make sense?
Because what's actually you're saying is that most dogs that are pets are basically tourists to 99% of the world. So if you're in a cell all day or Alabama and you go to Times Square, you're like, holy shit, oh my God, I don't know where to look.
Yes.
But if I'm a New Yorker, I'm like, why am I in Times Square? And I have no reaction, if anything. So I'm going to be totally fucking calm about it.
Right. You're adjusted to your environment.
Right. So if if they have hundreds of people around them all the time, these dogs in Turkey,
Yeah.
and people are feeding them, why would they get excited? There's another person. This is their norm.
Right. They're basically they're the same thing as African dogs walking around the plains of Africa, and they're like, oh look, there's snakes over there, there's a deer, it's like this is just the shit in their environment.
Wow.
They're in their nature.
Okay, yeah,
So
yeah,
let's say it
yeah.
like that. They're in their nature. But I don't want to say, like, you have to think about it like my dogs, for example.
How
right?
many do you have?
I only have Chiquita now, but I've had so many dogs over the years. And if you go to if Bobby has my book cover there, you'll see all my dogs. Just
Oh, those are all yours on the cover.
that's not all of them, but the two on the upper right, that's Chiquita and Pacino. Pacino passed away. Then you have Stella and Gustav to my left, if we're looking at it. And then the two on the Ray is on the bottom. He passed away. These are sort of the initial pack that I worked with on my show, and they consist of my own dogs and then dogs in my neighborhood that I've trained that I used to train other dogs with.
Did they make you put on those clothes on that cover?
Those are my clothes.
But doesn't look like how you usually dress.
That is how I'm just wearing a Henley.
Okay. Oh, it's a Henley. It looked like a button down. Okay.
No, it's a Henley. That's actually on my stoop. And when we did that shot,
Show the picture. Yeah.
when we're on the shot, they had a photographer who had an idea of what they wanted me to do, and they're like, "Can we have you laying with your hands with your chin on your hands?" I'm like, and looking up to the camera like this. I'm like, there's no way that's gonna happen. Here's what we'll do. I'll sit on my stoop.
Yeah.
I'll put all the dogs around me, and I guarantee the first shot we take is the one you'll keep. And I put them all up there, and I go, Chiquita, come here. Pacino, come here. Gustav, like, everybody go here. And then I was like, all right, you ready? And I was like, just ask them if they're hungry. And then they all look, and then it went, and that was within they took hours worth of pictures.
Yeah.
That was like within the first 10 pictures, it was that.
Oh.
But what I was saying was, like, Chiquita, who's on the upper left, and Pacino, who just passed away, we've done almost every morning show in the country together. They've flown with me across the country to train dogs. They fly on the airplane with me. So the stuff that they're adjusted to, like, they're not a tourist to anything.
Right.
If you think about it. I mean, I'm sure they wouldn't be okay living on the street because they're used to, sleeping in a warm bed at night. But if you have a dog owner who really knows what he's doing, those dogs are going to have the sort of, they're going to really have the golden ticket through life.
Guys, I talk about this every week because I love the product Heshy Socks, HESHI socks.com. Right off the bat, I'll tell you, if you use promo code WELCOME30, you get 30% off. Here's why these socks are so great, and I wear them at home every day. Dress socks are uncomfortable, and they're thin. They don't get protection on your feet. These are like Heshy Socks are like pillows on your feet. They have cushioning in the footbed, the heel and the toe, arch support in the center of the foot, and they're made with this high-end Pima cotton, which is super soft and breathable. And it's antimicrobial, so it kills the bacteria and keeps your feet from stinking. They say they're basically helping you get laid when you take your shoes off. I can't speak on that, but I can speak on the fact that these are socks that I wear literally every day because I enjoy the product. Heshi, heshysocks.com, promo code welcome30 for 30% off. So wait, one of the things, before we get to your background, one thing Cesar Millan always talks about is that your dog should be in a calm, submissive state, right? And I don't like that expression. Doesn't he mean calm, receptive state?
I think that Cesar Millan, and I don't want to bash him at all, and I know he takes a lot of flack in the media because he has sort of an antiquated way of expressing things and an antiquated way of looking at things, I think, and I think that's fair. And everything is about dominance and submission, where everything is almost on a hierarchy. Dogs don't really live in a hierarchy system so much as wolves do, even though I did reference that a little bit earlier. It's more like a social structure of a family where they have a place in their family. So your dog doesn't need to be submissive any more than your child needs to be submissive to you as their father, as opposed to they need to understand their role and responsibility in the family, which maybe just be, your job is to be the kid and to do your homework.
So maybe instead of submissive, subordinate's the word he wants.
No, subordinate's the word, but I think what you were saying is calm and receptive and responsive. So I think that your verbiage is a little more accurate.
So how did you get into this?
So I was a personal trainer, which really taught me a lot about how to work people through their quirks and foibles when they're trying to better themselves in one certain way. And I specialized in weight loss management and just general fitness.
Were you fat in high school?
I was chubby.
Yeah, my former coach was fat in high school, and I never let him forget it.
It's a lot of people who go into a lot of people who better their lives in a way and become experts. It's out of some necessity. Yeah, it's like anybody who gets good at something is like, well, why would you have the need to get good? What was the interest? And it's a drive. What's the drive? So that was my drive, and by working in a gym, you have to be part therapist, part personal trainer, and working people through their psychology is often more difficult than working them through their biology. It's very easy to be like, all right, come here, lift weights for an hour, but what you're fighting against is the resistance of what they're doing, not wanting to show up, how lazy they get, the problems going on through their day. And I started getting really successful at it because I think I've always been good communicating with people. And then I just got sick of it. I got sick of working with people, and I was always a huge dog lover. And I was like, man, I really want to adopt some dogs. And I adopted Chiquita and Pacino, who were really difficult. They were pit bulls from shelters. They were incredibly friendly, but they had such high energy. Yeah. They were just high. They were the friendliest dogs ever. There was never an aggressive issue, the sort of
stereotype.
The stereotype that you get. But it was just they were a handful. They were a fucking handful. And through learning how to work with them.
Wait, so I got to interrupt you. So you see how Ralph is with his dog Blue. It must drive you crazy.
Watching everybody with their dogs drives me crazy.
Okay, but this is Ralph's house. Do you ever see him with Blue, his dog, his pit bull?
It's not his. It's one that he watches sometimes.
Oh, I thought it was his.
No. But he knows how amped up that dog is. It's not his. He's like, yeah, it's not my dog.
Oh, I misunderstood. Okay.
Yeah. So through working with them, I faced a lot of challenge, and I write about this in my book. I was like, how I got overwhelmed, and I was like, maybe I should give these dogs back. And I started working with different types of trainers. And first, it was these trainers who everything was there's this sort of positive reinforcement style training that really isn't what it says it is, where it's sort of like everything is all positive and there is no such thing as punishment, where punishment doesn't necessarily mean hitting a dog or doing anything bad, but everything is done. It's almost like it's only rewarding when the dog does something right and ignoring when it does something wrong, which the problem with that is then the dog has to figure out itself what it did wrong. You're not really guiding it from both sides. And not that I would ever do anything abusive or punishing to a dog, but at the same time, there's positive ways to give corrections. Cesar Millan gets a lot of shit because he does a lot of forceful corrections, which that's not something you have to do either. So because you have the sort of people think correction is so negative because it means like hurting a dog, and they're like, so let's go the other way with positive. Neither, somewhere in the middle, and a nice gray area between the two, where corrections are reasonable and they're based around what a dog is starting to understand because you're teaching positively first. It's the synergy of those two things that makes for a good trainer. Just like a coach, he's like, I'm telling you when you're doing well, but I'm also correcting when you're doing wrong, and that player is going to get to where he needs to get faster. So I was learning from trainers like that. Then I learned from trainers who were a little bit too harsh. And somewhere in the middle, I was like, wait a second. It just clicked for me that I started to just pay a lot of attention and understand how these dogs were thinking, what they were trying to communicate, and that everything they were doing was learned behavior that I was teaching them either directly or inadvertently through my behaviors. And then I was like, you know what? I stopped training people. I started a dog walking route. And when you're walking dogs in New York City and you're taking a group of 10 of them to the park, you get really, really good at learning how to manage all different types of dogs' personalities, in different environments, around other dogs, around other owners, different sizes of dogs, and you learn fast. And it's sort of organically, people were asking if I could not only walk their dogs, but they're like, hey, can you teach me how to get the dogs to all walk kindly, like kind of the way you get them to walk, and can you get them to not be so nuts in the park? And it seems like when you all call them, they all come to you. And sure. And I started just training people's dogs in my neighborhood, and then I started fostering other dogs when there were dogs that were homeless or needed, interim housing before they got adopted. I would foster those dogs and kind of fix them up and get them to a place where they were adoptable. And I got really well known in my neighborhood as this guy who just had a green thumb with dogs. And then from then, it started expanding out. My vet started referring me to people. I remember there was this guy upstate who had a giant Irish Wolfhound, which that's a massive, massive
That's the
dog.
biggest breed. The tallest
one
breed.
of them. The Great Dane is the biggest. But
no, the Irish Wolfhound's taller, I think.
It might be burlier. I don't know. Maybe
they are. They're
big.
Yeah,
they're big as shit.
And they're expensive as fuck.
They are. This one
and they only live 7 years.
Here they are. That's exactly what he looked like, Charlie. Yeah. So this dog they had a lot of horses, and the dog was attacking the horses, and I was like, well, I deal with dogs who are attacking other dogs all the time.
Irish Wolfhounds are usually pretty mellow, aren't they?
This one wasn't. This one was triggered, and he's like, you think you could get this dog to be polite with my horses? And I was like, well, this horse, it's going to be just like getting it to be polite around another dog. And we worked up there at the farm for a full day, and she was like, I don't know, let me charge you what I think is reasonable for this, and I fixed it up. And then
what'd you do?
Yeah.
No, what did you do?
Oh, so it was exactly what we were talking about. The dog was exposed to the horses all the time, but always off leash, and didn't know what was expected of it in relationship to these horses. And so I went about just bringing him over to the stable, calming him, and when he started getting reactions, I corrected his reactions physically.
How'd you correct him?
It was just isolating the leash so he couldn't really have this little fit that he wanted to have, and just by holding it up and securing his body and then putting him into a sit position, and he would struggle and sort of squirm and resist, but it was like he wasn't like resisting me. He was just frustrated with the scenario. So there was it wasn't like a battle or a fight with me. He just required, like a kid who got too excited when he saw something and just needed to be physically stabilized a little bit. You just needed to isolate his movement. And as a result of that, the frustrations you could see went into his vocalizations, because he was having the internal panic was still there. So it was like, and if you just sort of sat there and soothed him, he would calm down. And then once he was calm, I would go about having the horses trot around him, and then I would have him go closer. And then, and this lasted a few hours up until the woman who was his owner could ride the horse and have him on the leash next to the horse. And then I was like, listen, you just have to go about this process daily. And if you do it properly, you should see results immediately. You should see them pretty quick. I mean, there are dogs that have some severe problems, and you're like, listen, this dog is just always going to be aggressive with other dogs. But in so much as if you're like, hey, there's a range of how much better this situation can get. And if the range is at the max, if we're talking from A to Z, this dog can get from A to L. You should be able to see that result fairly quickly, and then it's just a matter of the next day you get to the environment, the dog is going to want to react the way that he did before, but you can repeat the same things to get him back to L pretty quickly. And so I always tell people, if they have a dog trainer, I'm like, listen, if you don't experience what you'd like things to be like in some fashion during that session, you're not with somebody who knows what they're doing. And it doesn't matter how much schooling people had. Some people just have a touch with things. I'm not comparing myself to this person right now, but a lot of times the experiential and artistic side of things precedes the books that are written about it after, and the scholastic version of it. So a lot of people are like, well, you didn't go to dog behavioral school and all this, right? But you know what? Albert Einstein didn't like learn his theories of relativity by reading them in a book first. Like he had these sort of he figured these things out for himself, and then the scholastic things followed it. So and I'm not comparing myself to him by all means.
And the dogs didn't go to behavioral school either.
No.
And neither did the cavemen who domesticated those wolves.
And neither did the dogs that were sitting there in Turkey. And there's every different personality of dog there. And how many fights did you see when you were there? How many dog fights did you see?
0.
Exactly. So
not even aggression.
Sure. So a lot of times. And I've battled, because of the amount of success I've had at this, believe me, they've come out of the woodwork from behaviorists who run collegiate programs and people who are like, they're a part of whatever associations they are, and who are you accredited by? And it's like, if we just take the Pepsi challenge on this thing, I'm like, listen, my experience has been the guiding force and the teacher behind the things that I know. There are absolutely things I don't know, and I don't claim to know everything, but you have to understand, like, there are so many self-proclaimed experts in this field, that's myself included, that you really have to be like, hey, let me actually try this person and see how this goes. And like, you can't really go by someone's scholastic resume. You really have to go by their resume in the field, I think.
Ricky, can you put up that picture of that dark brown or black dog that was sleeping on like the stairs on concrete? I want to ask Justin a question. Sure. So I was going to the supermarket in Bodrum, and this dog, he was so cute. Blow it up a little so you can see that cute little face. And there's that expression.
That's a cutie, huh?
I know. And he looks so sweet. So the expression is, let sleeping dogs lie. And Cesar Millan always says, if you see a dog you don't know, no touch, no talk, no eye contact. Could I have gone up and woken him up and pet him?
I don't know if you'd want to like startle him.
Not startle him.
I think if you like woke him up, like clapped and woke him out, like I disagree with that eye contact thing completely, because I think listen, dogs are
what would you have told me to do if I wanted to play with that dog?
I'd say you gotta like wake him up with a noise, don't startle him, like and let him wake up himself, and then call him over and see if he wants to come to you. But he's not going to wake up to attack you. If he woke up to attack you, wouldn't be sleeping there.
Right.
But that sort of thing, and then I want to finish with just the history thing, and then we'll move. But that's a ridiculous comment, because if you think about this, like, dogs are one of the only animal that looks to our facial expressions to try to figure out what we're thinking. I mean, primates don't even do that because they don't have a reason to. We're dogs' evolutionary niche, so they're trying to think like, oh, am I pleasing this person in order to get that bone that they wanted, or that piece of pizza where you were in Turkey? So listen, Cesar Millan has done a lot of cool things, especially putting dog training on the map and making people realize that, like, oh, there are resources available if you have problems in that. But in terms of just like some of those theories, to me, are just they sound ridiculous. And I'm not tooting my own horn saying, but that's what they sound like to me. So anyway, so I started getting very successful at training all these dogs in my neighborhood. And then what happened was and then it started going like outside my neighborhood. And one day CBS came over and they were like, hey, we heard about you. We want to do some show about like dog walkers or dog things. And their ideas sounded, it wasn't CBS, I'm sorry. It was a smaller media company. And their ideas sounded pretty ridiculous to me, like dog dating shows and this and that. And I said, listen, why don't you just come and follow me around while I'm working with these dogs and see what you think? And I think, when you're doing a TV show, listen, they were casting somebody because of a personality, a certain look. And if they happen to have a good ability with dogs, that's great, right?
Right.
And so they started doing this ensemble. They did a pilot of this sort of ensemble show where it involved everybody, like weird aspects of things that people do with dogs, from something called like a doggy doula, to that's like, someone who introduces dogs and babies, which this person was ridiculous, to someone who's a matchmaker and helps people find love through their dogs. And they sent this thing off to test. And when CBS saw it, they're like, yeah, this show would be great. Get rid of everybody else. And then, the premiere of Dogs in the City got greenlit, and they were like, hey, this show's going to be about you just doing what you do and going to work every day. And we did the show, and it was really difficult. And
why was it difficult?
I was to be honest with you, and I could say this now, although I appreciated like what it did for me and the fact that I really got to be myself a lot, it was a constant fight to do that. There was, it was still a TV show where they had big ideas for what production was, and it had to be very flamboyant, and it was the fastest show in the history to go from green light to air, and we were airing while we were shooting it.
Wow.
and there was no prep for anything, and I was on my own. And I also had very little help except for the production aspect of things. And so I was, I didn't have time to meet these dogs or prepare or anything like that. And everything was done on the fly. And so they'd be like set up shots for things that I was like, these are not things that I'm going to do. And a lot of things got missed. Like, I was working with a blind dog at one point. I was doing something where I was having the dog work with other blind dogs to show the owner how successful this could be. And they missed the fact that the other dogs were blind. So like a lot of things, it just was moving too fast. And, I almost went to the hospital for exhaustion at a certain point because it was 57 days of 18-hour days with no break.
Oh, wow.
And I have anxiety as it is, So
dogs must help you with anxiety.
They do.
Yeah,
they do. They get me because you have to be in the moment with them. But although the show, I think, was a success, it was very difficult to do. It was unnecessarily difficult to do. But we didn't have the time. And so it was definitely fast food. It was definitely done like fast food. And had we had the time and the prep, I would have been able to do more. But, but an expert sees the holes in things. Like I see, I have standards for things. I have standards for the way I train dogs. Like I do 2 hour to 3 hour sessions with people because I'm like, no, I want this to be done right. But I'm glad I did it, and it was a phenomenal experience, and it got me, I got a lot of work from it, and I started training dogs around the country at that point, and then I authored a book called The Language of Dogs, which is everything that I wanted to write in a dog training book. I read a ton of dog training books, and none of them really expressed the things that I wanted to express. And so my business partner at the time, David Donenfeld, whose name isn't on it because, they don't do that. He wasn't really a ghostwriter. We wrote it in collaboration together, but he was really the man with, his fingers on the keyboard for the most part.
My name's on all the books. They wouldn't let you put his name on?
It says with David Donenfeld.
Yeah.
But I'm like a guy who's like, if we wrote this together, the name should be together. They're selling something. So the book is sort of the thing I'm the most proud of, not the show. The book is it because I'm like, if I had to give somebody, anytime I work with new clients, I'm like, this is the book I'd want you to read. And I'm not saying because I wrote it because I was saying that. Because I was like, shit, I really need a guidebook that in so much as a book can teach somebody something. I think what it can do is just like if you read spiritual text or anything, or you're reading sort of anything you want to know how to do, how to get fit with your body. You want things that I think impart a little wisdom and a philosophy to help people think a certain way. And then you want to provide them with user tips and tricks to help them along the way with that so they can practice what you're teaching them how to think, but they have a practical application for it.
You guys, I talk about this every week because I love the product, Heshy Socks, Heshi socks.com. Right off the bat, I'll tell you, if you use promo code WELCOME30, you get 30% off. Here's why these socks are so great, and I wear them at home every day. Dress socks are uncomfortable, and they're thin. They don't get protection on your feet. These are like, Heshy Socks are like pillows on your feet. They have cushioning in the footbed, the heel and the toe, arch support in the center of the foot, and they're made with this high-end Pima cotton, which is super soft and breathable. And it's antimicrobial, so it kills the bacteria and keeps your feet from stinking. They say they're basically helping you get laid when you take your shoes off. I can't speak on that, but I can speak on the fact that these are socks that I wear literally every day because I enjoy the product. Heshi, HeshySocks.com, promo code WELCOME30 for 30% off. Someone tweeted at me or Facebook that they were annoyed that I'm always plugging my forthcoming book. And I'm like, the reason I'm mentioning it all the time is because I try to put everything I know into it.
Yeah.
The whole point of this book is that instead of me sitting you down for 5 minutes, it's all in there. And that's why people write books. Well, it's two reasons: a paycheck, but it's also like, because you don't have to ask me. It's all in there. And hopefully it'll help your life.
Yeah. There's nothing like sitting down at a keyboard and just having and being able to clear your mind. I mean, the experience of writing a book is a beautiful thing, as you must know. It's frustrating, and you go into like this sort of hell when you have to do it. But the process of actually sitting there and being like, okay, now I have this open slate, and I can just express this in the linear fashion in which I see it and want to give the information to somebody, as opposed to like when someone's just doing an interview or things are fragmented.
Right.
And I thought that was great. And then from that, I got called to Hong Kong to do a show there. And I did a TV show in Hong Kong, and the same, they were the, in terms of dog ownership, those people were they were the furthest away from what I would think, would be reasonable expectations of how a dog should be living. Like dogs live in the house. They have like an indoor toilet for their dogs. They walk their dog maybe once a week. And so like that was really frustrating and heartbreaking for me to, because although like they love dogs, they a lot of them dress them up like little cartoon characters and sort of treat them almost like the way you would a hamster. And that, as an animal lover and someone who knows that animals are supposed to be outside running around, in the city of Hong Kong, I found the culture of the way people treated dogs was very difficult for me. And I don't say this, I'm not really saying that with judgment. I'm saying it more with, it was a real experience for me that I had a hard time with. And I was trying to help them as much as I can. And we were, we only did like one mini series of that show. But, then I came back to New York and, my focus is I got saturated. I got like dogged out. You know what I mean? And so now I just do it. What I do, I train dogs in New York City or in like the surrounding area, and I keep it, if you want to reach out to me and people need information, I do Skype sessions. It's amazing the things you can do with Skype, and I do sessions, in New York City. And if people want to fly me out for something, like I'll do intensives with people, and they work pretty great.
So when people are trying to buy a dog, what are the most difficult breeds to work with?
First of all, I never suggested anybody buy a dog. There's no reason to.
What if you want a purebred?
Yeah, I mean,
if I'm going to get my Valhund, I'm not getting it at the
I'm like a rescue guy. Oh, wait, can I just say this one more thing?
Of course.
Can I say this one thing? Before I even started all this, 12 years ago, when I first started comedy, I started a charity called Funny for Fido, where we bring the country's best comics together to raise money for all the homeless animals. Wow. And I've been doing Funny for Fido for 12 years. So I'm such a rescue first type of guy. Like, I'm the type of guy that's like, listen, for every dog bought, another one dies in a shelter. Now, I understand that people want purebreds, but I've just always pushed people to rescue first. Now, that's just me personally. Now, what's the best way is never to go online. No.
What's the worst breed what's the most difficult breed to deal with?
I don't think, I've never experienced any sort of breedism.
Okay.
I think that dogs are individuals, and I think that certain breeds have traits that people should be aware of, and your personality and your lifestyle should match those traits.
Sure.
So if you're living in Florida, if you're living in Naples, Florida, and it's 101 and humid, and you're 80 years old and you're like, I want to celebrate my retirement by getting this husky, that's probably not the best fit for you.
Right.
You have to get the dog that fits in with your lifestyle. But I've never found there to be a breed more difficult than another breed, so long as the environment that the dog is living in, and the environment meaning the actual living environment and the person they're living with, is one that is going to breed in itself the most success for that dog to be happy.
Yeah, but some breeds are smarter than others, so they're going to be more receptive to training.
I don't think that their intelligence is the thing that makes them receptive to training. I think it's their desire to please and their desire to interact. And I talk about that a lot in my book. A lot of people think like, well, this dog is so smart. I'm like, right. But a lot of dogs are smart, and they're not really driven by food, affection, or anything. So they can be very smart and a little standoffish. Yeah. And then you have a dog that's causing problems because it's just sort of sitting there like, like I'm a neurotic Jewish guy. And it's like, if like, I'm just sort of sitting like figuring things out in my head all day, and then you get neurosis. So a lot of times you have dogs their intelligence is working against them. So I don't think all dogs are intelligent enough to learn what you got to teach them.
Yeah, true. But I mean, like terriers, right, are notorious for being standoffish and not really interested in listening. Is that inaccurate?
No, that's very inaccurate. Yeah, that's very inaccurate.
I mean, there's lots of like what's a Japanese chin, right, that are described as a cat in a dog body.
I understand that.
So they're not.
I think you're thinking of the Shiba Inu is what you're thinking.
No, the chin with the papillon. Isn't it? No, it's a Japanese chin. Look this up, Ricky.
They usually say that about the Shiba Inu is usually considered the one that's the most.
Hold on, I know I'm thinking
this chin.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I've worked with a bunch of those. I've never found them to be that way.
Okay.
I've always found them very very affectionate and very similar to Shih Tzus, which are very, very affectionate, hungry, because they're bred by royalty to sit on their lap dogs. They're literally bred by royalty to be on lap dogs. I'm sure that information is out there. I'm not contradicting what you're saying, but I've never found that. Also, the same way I've never found pit bulls to be inherently aggressive.
No, but
I found them to be. I found those dogs.
They're rambunctious.
They have a lot of high energy, just like
Yeah.
a bot, but I've also found them to be, they are the dog that is typical used by the people du jour. They are the dog du jour used by the type of people that would be like, hey, let me turn an animal into this thing. Let me use it as a status symbol. So I think that's nurture more than nature. The nature part of it is their inherent, their strength, their power, their,
And their desire to please. It's very high with pit bulls.
Yeah, so I find dogs to be more individual. I think the way dogs think and learn and their general behavior, that's all dog. And then after that, you have I think the breed there's certain traits. There's definitely certain traits, and like I have my one dog's a pit bull border collie mix. So she's like fucking crafty as hell.
Right.
But she's also got the brawn, and she's like also, she's a tough chick. So that's an awesome combination. So if you see those traits in her, but it's ultimately her personality. That's the thing that, that's the thing that you look for first. So I kind of don't think in terms of breed when it comes to that.
Yeah, but if I'm someone who's looking to buy a dog, right? There are certain traits that are you saying there aren't traits that are more prevalent in certain breeds?
There are traits that are prevalent in certain breeds, but you're saying what dog would you not suggest?
No, I'm saying which would you suggest least? If I've never had a dog.
No, there's not one that I would suggest least because I don't know you. I'd ask you questions.
Okay, the trait I'm looking for.
Here, let's what are you looking for? Let's do it. Let's just play this out.
Well, so when I was a kid,
yes,
I had Simon & Schuster's Guide to Dogs.
Okay.
Which had a picture.
Simon & Schuster published my book, by the way.
Oh, yeah. So this is from 81 or something.
Okay.
It had a picture of every breed on the right hand, and the left hand there was a description.
Sure.
And I went through that all the time, and I picked out my imaginary pack when I was an adult. So I've got it all set in my head.
Let me hear it.
Well, it's not going to actually happen.
Let me hear it anyway.
There was one that wasn't in the book, the Valhund, which is the Swedish version of the Corgi. Then I would have a German Shepherd. Then I would have a Borzoi, a Pug.
You're making an NFL team basically here.
Well, they're
your armamentarium of dogs,
but they're also awesome in different ways.
Yeah.
There are a couple of you know what I love is the what do you call those monkey the one that was in There's Something About Mary, the ones that look like have a monkey face. They look like Chewbacca.
Oh, the Brussels Griffin.
Yeah, Brussels Griffin.
Yeah, they're so cute.
They are so cute, and they have a Chewbacca face.
Yeah, they do. Well, I think they're what the actual Ewoks were made from.
Yeah, is that right?
I think that's actually true. I think
look at that face.
I think the Ewoks are made from them in Star Wars.
Oh my god,
I think that's a fact.
They make me so happy.
But if you were like, what is your day like? I say like, what is your day like, and what do you want to do? Like, what's this dog gonna do with you all day?
So I used to have for many years aquariums. And I used to keep the
dog's got to stay in a fish tank.
No, the most difficult, dogfish, which is a shark. The most difficult fish. Then I had succulents, which are extremely tricky to take care of. So I know how to deal with difficult things. The thing is, I would never get a dog is because I would have to walk it every day. I'd have to reorient my life around the dog, and I don't want to do that. And the thing is,
so you
hold
shouldn't
on,
have a dog, period.
I shouldn't have a dog. No, that's why it's imaginary. Like I'm also the kind of person where I decided to get into plants, and then the next day I have 200 species in my house.
Right.
So if I got one, I'd have to get 13.
Oh, your OCD is awesome.
But I just love it. I love them.
Yeah.
And it's just like if
Do you kill bugs or no? You let them outside?
I kill them, of course.
I let bugs
I'm,
outside.
Oh no, I'm a monster.
So bugs are the only animal you don't like?
No, I don't like animals that are disobedient. Like
bugs are disobedient.
It shouldn't be in my house. No one invited you in here.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
you like animals that can reason?
Sure.
First. Okay.
I mean, I would have. I'm not going to get into it because I'm going to get heat, but there's a dark side here. The point is, I would want it would be frustrating. There's got to be like a Pekinese. You're telling me a Pekinese is going to be as receptive to training as a pit bull?
You have to.
I know
meet the
some,
individual. You have to meet the individual. I mean, like I see what you're saying. Yes, you're painting in broad strokes. I see exactly what you're saying.
But is that wrong for me to paint? You're saying it's wrong?
It's not wrong but here's the thing. Let me show it to you from the other side. The majority of people I train are people who are like, well, I bought this dog because I thought he was going to be a certain way because this is what the description said.
No, that's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Just like with fish. Just because the species is aggressive, you might have the docile one and vice versa. 100%.
And then people are scratching their head wondering why they got this English bulldog. And they're like, I just thought the thing was going to lay around all day. And I was like, why? Because the book said they're lazy dogs.
That's not how it works.
That's not how it works. So my answer is, but the amount of times, if we were to flip that coin, let's say it like this, if we were to play the law of averages and you were to be like, okay, we're going to flip this coin, how many times the coin is going to land on the side you think it's going to land, I found it to be contrary to public opinion more than not. And that's why I would always say the best thing to do. That's why I like rescues, because it's like, if it doesn't work, you can give them back. You may feel like shit about doing it, but you could be like, let me foster this dog, live with it, and you're like, holy shit, we're like match made in heaven. It's like dating.
The dog that's in the pound is going to be very different than the dog that you live with, right? Because that's a very different environment.
Oh my God.
Right? Am I wrong?
Unbelievably right.
So how do you pick a dog in a pound that's going to be the one for you?
So that's a great question. And here's a great answer on that. You would first have to define the parameters of what you were first comfortable with. So if they were like, you know what, this dog's been since he's been in the pound, he's gotten a little aggressive in here. You're like, well, that's something I could handle. Some people are like, that's something I couldn't handle. If someone's like, well, the dog's a little nervous and so he's shaking and he's afraid of people, but you're like, all right, well, that's something I can handle. And if there were situations where the dog is, he's really rambunctious, he's got a lot of energy. The guy's like, great, I have 4 acres. And like I work outside, no problem. You know what I mean? So first define the parameters of what you're comfortable with bringing into your house based on what you know of that animal, right? And then once you're there, you can just sort of feel it out and be like, all right, let's get some training for this dog. Let's educate myself and provide it with all the things that it needs. Let's meet it halfway, right? We can't expect a dog that's been out of a shelter and is rambunctious to live in a studio apartment in Manhattan. That's ridiculous. So you're going to need to meet it halfway and provide it with all the things that it needs to get that proper energy out and to adjust. You have to create an environment that it's going to thrive in. And then once you're in there, you'll be like, you know what? This is either going to work or it's not going to work. But I think fostering is the best thing because it's like you're giving it a shot. And I think a lot of people get upset because they're like, we had to give the dog back and then I'm going to feel too guilty. It's like, well, but that's sort of the process of giving it a chance. The process of giving it's like going on a date with someone. You're like, you know what? I don't want to go on a date with someone because what if they're not right for me and then I hurt their feelings? It's like, right, but you're not giving them an opportunity either. You know, so that's the trial and error thing.
I was actually...
We're having a great conversation right now, I think.
I don't feel that way. I was actually offended once by a dog. My buddy Ryan Holiday, who's been a guest on the show, multiple best-selling author. I stayed at his house once while he was away, watched his house, and I watched his dachshund, who was so sweet. I was against dachshunds till I met her. She was so smart. First of all, she was obsessed with her ball being thrown, and she would look at me and do motions with her head for me to throw the ball. It was a dog talking to me.
Cueing
yeah,
you.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
But I came back to his house. That's a long-haired. She's a short-haired.
Easy. Bobby's working hard.
It's a different breed. Those are different. They show differently.
Bobby doesn't know. He's just a guy.
They show differently. Well, I'm going to have a talk with the supervisor. I came back a few years later. She didn't remember me. And that pissed me the fuck off. Yeah. I thought dogs have good memories.
They do have good memory. How do you know she didn't remember?
Because she was all barking and then she was all suspicious.
Yeah, but
Hanno.
Yeah, well, she may have taken a little bit more of an introduction at that point.
Well,
maybe she had a short memory.
You only have one introduction. That's what introduction means. We had the introduction.
I mean, maybe you had a longer meeting. Your first time hanging out together. Your date should have been longer. Maybe she did have a short memory.
Well, I think that's horrible.
Or maybe you one-on-one is a different scenario, and she was reacting more to the situation. A lot of times you have situations like that. When I have these certain dogs that I train, and with me they're like excellent, and then I'll work with their owners, and then the dogs get so possessive and territorial around their owners because how much the people coddle them at home. You know, one of my favorite dogs is this dog named Arthur. He's this little, and I love big dogs, but this guy's this little terrier, like Yorkie mix. He's not that, but he's the coolest, toughest, like most like in his body little dog. Like people are like this is like a Rottweiler and like a confident Rottweiler.
I hate Rottweilers.
Okay,
because they have no affect. They all look like they have autism. They have a blank expression. Drives me fucking crazy.
Okay,
I hate them.
Okay. Well, now we scratch that off the list for you.
Yeah, that's.
But when he's around his owner, like he's got this protective thing because you know it's the two of them in a house together, and Jane, who I love, is like the sweetest, most feminine woman, and Arthur's become like her little man. And so when they're out walking together, he's like, you know, if there's another dog there, he may try to hurt mom, and he takes on that role. And then if you give me the leash, it just stops immediately.
One of the things Milan says, and I'm sorry we keep referencing him, but that's my context for this, is that the dog should always walk behind you on the street.
Again, here's what I'm saying. The intention of that is to basically be like a dog should be responsive with you and your walk should be an interactive thing together, right? So you're sort of confusing. That's almost like confusing the visual.
I mean, if I'm on a
with the
date, she has
intention.
to walk behind me. That's
Yes,
different.
I understand
Yes.
that. But wait, what were you saying that, like, here, the jest in that is like, you kind of want a woman, you kind of want to take the lead in most situations. You want to be the guide, and you want to be the one who is sort of you want to be the director of that environment, and you want to be able to take care of somebody else and have them feel safe and comfortable. You want to be the negotiator between that person in the outside world. And I mean, this is a weird way to say, because it's comparing women to dogs, which I'm not trying to do. But let's bring it back to dogs.
Dogs are well behaved.
But what I'm saying is, basically, what you want is you want to be.
You can introduce your dogs to your friends.
Right. You want to be able to
Dogs are interesting.
Yeah. They are. It's funny. I think he's confusing. He's like, if the dog should always walk behind you, which is the sign of a dog that is being respectful, looking to you to take the lead, and looking to deferring to you to what it's supposed to do and what's appropriate in any social interaction. It's like, so if the dog walks ahead of you like a few feet and looks back at you every now and then, like, is that a difference? No, like, my dogs typically, they walk behind me, they follow, but if Chiquita gets out, like, 10 feet or something like that, like, what's the difference? Like, she's not pulling me on the lead.
Well, I think
that's what he means.
Yeah.
Right. But again, if you're going to make generalizing statements like that, then I think that, like, what ends up happening is people are like, my dog should never walk in front of me, and that's stupid.
Okay.
And that's what I meant again by things being like these sort of, to use it here, to pun intended, this dogmatic, antiquated approach to things. It's almost like, if boy is good, he do homework and then look down. Like, he sounds like a crazy old Russian man, and I'm like, stop it. It's like, it's just
hitting close to home for
yeah.
me.
Well, I'm Russian too. Are you Russian?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
born
Russian
there.
too.
Were you born there?
No, I wasn't born there.
When did your family come over?
My grandma is Russian, Polish, German. We're just Eastern European. So, but that's our roots.
When did she come over?
My grandma was a Holocaust survivor, so she came over when she was 17, right after.
Oh wow!
They
Okay,
fucked
so you've
that
been here
guy
for a
Hitler
while.
up.
Yeah. Whatever happened to him?
I don't know. I think he's in a cave with Elvis.
So if I'm watching someone's dog, right, and their dog is pulling me,
Yes.
which drives me crazy.
Yes, that drives me crazy.
What do I need to do to get that dog to know its place?
Okay. I'm not in that scenario right now, so so each thing is a little bit different. But the best way to say is to having a little bit of dog knowledge is, if you have a little bit of dog knowledge, you'll be able to adjust that scenario. But I don't know if I can just impart that right now to you right now.
Okay.
Because I'm not in front of why that dog is pulling, what it's pulling for, if it has a harness on, which a lot of people use harnesses to get dogs to stop pulling, which I really think that's sort of negotiating with terrorists. Like, dogs should wear collars or head halties, in my opinion, because dogs communicate that's how they communicate with each other. And harnesses are designed for pulling. I mean, harnesses are made for dogs to pull.
Right.
So you're sort of putting the most comfortable thing for them to pull on. It's a little bit of a mixed message. So it's hard for me to just tell you what to do in that scenario if I'm not saying, but that was the kind of scenario that's like, if you or I Skyped it together and I was like, let me see what's going on here. That's the sort of thing you could easily see.
So you have no advice?
The best thing it would be to walk that dog. I like using martingale collars.
Okay.
Having the dog sit beside you before you leave the house. So it's like, a lot of times you open the door and the dog's going into the hall.
Right.
I mean, assuming you live in an apartment.
Yeah.
The dog's going into the hallway and then it's excited to go out. So it's pulling from the get-go.
Right,
Also,
correct.
when you first put the leash on, if the dog sees the leash and it's jumping, so excited to go, you have this buildup of energy that is now rushing you outside. So the best thing to do is to sort of just, like, when you have this leash on, sit him down and calm him and let him know, hey, this is the behavior I require for you before we even walk out the door, and then keep that sort of nice, easy flow as you walk down your hallway and out the first door. And of course, he's going to resist a little bit, but you can pull him back, sit him down again, and it may be a little bit of a war of attrition at that point. But eventually, if you're like, hey, this is how we walk, and you keep your hand nice and loose, and you have the leash at a reasonable length, so it's like you can't get too far behind, you can't get too far back, then anytime he sort of pushes at least a foot in front, you can give it a little bit of a cue. I won't say like a correction. Would be more of like a physical cue to keep him healing, which is walking by your heel. And then you can use things like praise, such a verbal praise, good boy, little pats on the head, treats, and things like that, to say like, hey, I'm sort of setting the physical framework here and rewarding you for following along with that. And that would be the basic build out of that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Thank you. That's actually very useful because I love dog sitting and
Yeah.
all things like that.
The martingale collar is the absolute best though for that.
What makes it a good collar?
Because when you use it, you could bring it up on the screen, Bobby. When you use a flat collar, you have a lot
Don't
of.
address my staff.
I'm sorry, both Bobby's my staff too. So when you we're on the same network.
No, yeah, but this shows all disrespect.
Right. When you have a flat collar, then the problem. Okay, so when you have a flat collar, no, the one with the metal chain bow. When you have a flat collar, the problem with the flat collar is that it's just pressure on the throat when you're pulling back. When you have the martingale, what ends up happening is the chain, it makes a figure eight.
Where's the chain go? Around the top or the bottom?
So that whole thing slip. Can you scroll up, Bobby, just so I can see? Okay, so you see the red one?
Yeah.
The red. Okay, so yeah, that one. So the chain would go on the top.
So there's a triangle made by a chain, and there's a cloth around the neck.
The cloth around the neck, and the chain goes. So it makes a figure eight. So when you pull on the chain, the collar gets a little tighter, but it closes on itself more than it closes on the dog's neck. So a flat collar is just similar to like a choke chain,
right? And
those can be very detrimental to the dog's trachea. So what ends up happening is the thing has an action to it, meaning that when I snap it quickly, it goes ching ching, which is why the metal ones are the best because they make a little sound and they don't stretch out. The fabric ones, what ends up happening is you get two kind of hardened circles. And it ends up just becoming like a flat collar with like another fabric circle on it. So because it has that action, what ends up happening is when you snap it, much like here, I'll do it with my watch right now. If I were to if I go like this,
right,
it ends up having this light touch, and the dog also responds to the sound where you can just sort of make that little kind of tap it, and it makes this little cue, and then the dog starts responding to the cue. So that, to me, those, in terms of collars, those are the safest, best ones for training any dog, and then I that's what I use on my dogs, you know.
So how many? I mean, you have how many dogs? You only have one.
I only
right
have
now.
Chiquita now.
Are you going to get more?
You know what's the nice thing is she's 14.
Oh,
she's the cutest thing, and she's all over my Instagram. But she carries like stuff home from the store. I taught her how to I love teaching dogs how to carry packages.
Yeah.
She's 14 years old. She's slowed down a lot. She's still so playful and sweet. And it's so nice having an older dog like that. And we have dogs in and out of the house that all the time that I'm training. But in terms, I love it being just kind of like me and her right now. And then when she passes, I'll get the next one. I don't have this thing. Even when my dog died of cancer, I'm like, that's what happens. Like, you give them the best life possible. And when it's time for their show to end, the show ends. And that's it. And then you go to, that's not the one you want to bring up, Bobby. That's just me. No, that's me being ridiculous and something else. You want to, if you go to the language of dogs, there she is.
Oh,
there she's.
Fellas, here's a little tip.
There she's carrying,
women don't like to see you walking home carrying wart remover, but they love.
But I have her, if you go on the language of dogs Instagram, you'll see it's like she's carrying cupcakes and stuff. But I like life is like a series of dogs, as George Carlin used to say.
Do you know what the best thing I like about you know what I love? I've seen it when you've seen this too, I'm sure. When you have one dog walking another dog.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh my God, that's so cool.
It's very easy to teach them. I love how easy it is to teach them how to carry packages. Could you go on the language of dogs Instagram, Bob? I want to show them carrying the cupcakes, because there she is carrying a bag of cupcakes and not eating them. But it's so easy. I'll tell you how to do this right now if you want to know.
Yes.
Okay. Here's how you teach a dog.
Because dogs want to help.
Yeah, but here's how you teach them how to retrieve something. Okay. You start by going to the pet store and getting them a bone or something they love. And you have them carry that bone in their mouth while they're walking, right? Okay, that would be step one. Then what?
The way home?
No, I mean you could even do it for a few feet, like that. The length of time. Here she is carrying.
Oh, what a cutie!
And you could play. Here she is carrying cupcakes to bring to my nephews. You can play that.
Oh my God, so cute.
So what you do is you have a bone or something that they love to eat that they will carry. And eventually they'll start to carry. I don't want to go through the process of how to teach them walk while it's in their mouth. Some dogs are just going to go nuts and not move because they just want to eat that bone, right? Then what you would do is you would go to put that same yeah, there she is. You would go to putting that same item wrapped inside of a paper bag, and so they were now holding the bone in the bag, let's say. Okay? Then you would do that for a while, and then you would eventually put the bone to the bottom of the bag and roll the top of the bag so they were holding sort of a handle with the object inside of it. And by the way, each time they get a certain amount of destination, you would then take the thing out and give it to them. So they're learning if I walk this from point A to point B, maybe it's a few yards. Okay. Then what you do
the dog gets it.
Right, dog gets it.
Yeah.
Then you could go about putting the bone and different objects in the bag, and then you go to just putting another object in the bag and then giving them a treat when they're done. And then eventually what happens is like they carry things. And a lot of dogs just like carrying things. Like you put something in their mouth, they feel proud of it because it helps raise their self-esteem. You know, they have this sort of they have a lot of the same human emotions that we have, and not a lot that people think they have. And they're like, my dog peed on the rug. He knew he was supposed to do it. They did it to be vindictive. That is not something that they do. Dogs don't have that. They don't have that sort of foresight the way we do.
Wait a minute. Hold on.
Nope. No.
Hold on. When I was in college,
yes,
my friend Lori Hannigan, who is a sweetheart, yelled at her roommate's dog, and that dog took a shit in her pillow.
Okay.
That's not vindictive?
No, that's not really vindictive. The dog wasn't like, well, now here I'm going to do this. You have to think about, like, the dog was probably thought it was doing something wrong. When they do that, it's either fear or it's territorialism. Like, they're not receiving that information the way we do. It's like, here, you know how dogs see with muted colors?
Yes.
They're also picking up a lot of our social cues with muted colors because they can't conceive all that. Just like when they're smelling things, they smell 1 million, I think it was like 1 million times more than we do. So when we're just smelling things around the room, or we smell a bowl of soup, we just smell a bowl of soup. They smell each individual ingredient.
Right.
So it's the same. So just reverse the way our psychology and our social structure is. It's the flip on that. And so people are, you know what I mean? So it's an equal opposite. There you go. So tell Lori.
I haven't spoken to her since college.
Because of that?
Well, she killed the dog out of spite. That was vindictive. She held her under the water until the bubble stopped. So what kind of people do you think should not have dogs?
You, which we determined, right? Yeah. If people like anybody, I think people who are like, I
gotta ask. Sorry, Rob. I just asked you a question. Do you agree with me? You hear all these stories, and I think these people should be shot. I'm advocating violence in this show.
Cool.
These people who have dog for like 10 years.
Oh my God.
Then they move. And
they bring him to the shelter.
Yeah, I'm like, you should be shot. Not even a question.
Like, listen, some situation, like, you can't predict everybody. Like, imagine somebody. I try to have empathy for people. And I'm like, okay, what if somebody like found out that they have a disease, went through a divorce, they'd be like, holy shit. What if someone's life is crumbling to pieces? But in a way like that, you'd almost be like...
No, but a lot of times they don't feel guilt. It's one thing if like, fuck, I have no choice.
No, right. I've seen a lot of people like, no, we're moving, so like the dog's got to go because so does the couch.
Yeah.
The dog is like, that to me is like, that's despicable.
Yeah. And I'm just...
That's unforgivable.
I want to go on the record that
shooting.
If you're that kind of person, you are a monster.
Can we do it on the podcast?
Yeah, they are not welcome. Let's just answer the question I asked earlier. What kind of people shouldn't get dogs?
Shouldn't get dogs.
Yeah.
I think anybody who's not willing to meet them halfway to understand like what dogs' basic needs are for... here, we'll use Cesar Millan since you love him so much. Discipline, exercise, and affection. And someone's like, yeah, I work a 9 to 5. My dog will stay in the house. Then I'll walk them at night. Like anybody who doesn't realize that dogs need to be outside every day, no matter what breed they are. Like they need to be outside running around playing every day. People have a lot of unreasonable expectations and they get dogs for selfish reasons. Someone's going through a breakup and they're like, I just needed something cute to hold. So I went to the pet store and I bought one.
That's crazy.
Anybody who thinks buying a dog at a pet store is good should not have a dog. If you buy a dog at a pet store, that you are just an asshole.
I have a question. I can't even think of it till now. My friend's friend had a dog who is out of control. She first bit and killed another dog that was in the apartment building.
What kind of dog was this?
Pit bull, girl. Mm-hmm. And then recently she had a party and she let her out, or she got out I don't remember how it was. And my other friend's 2-year-old, she tackled her and bit her on the forehead.
So, okay.
And what do you do with, and she tried to get her put down and they wouldn't do it. What do you do in that case?
I mean, listen, there are a lot of people. Let me speak. Let me give the dog a chance first, and then let me give you both sides of this answer. Okay. There are a lot of trainers and dog owners that could handle a dog that has had those incidents and turn those around. Okay. However, the likelihood of that happening based on like who she is and where she is may not be possible. And if she's in a scenario where other animals and people, especially children,
Right.
are going to get hurt, the responsible thing to do would be to euthanize that
Yes.
dog. And if that's the responsible thing to do, then you can absolutely get that done if you needed to get that done. Now, I'm not going to provide resources for how people can euthanize dogs, but that's not that dog could easily be put into the shelter system, and they would do that immediately. Like that,
The vets wouldn't do it.
those vets may not do it.
Yeah,
but-
I had to say-
those vets may be like, listen, our job is not to euthanize as disciplinarian technique. We're not executioners here. Dogs euthanize as mercy killings for animals that are sick and are in pain.
I would never be able to live with myself if my dog caused my friend's child to have stitches. Like the guilt would be it's on me. It's not on the dog.
Sure.
And that's
Agreed.
just unconscionable. It's like having a gun around and someone gets shot. That was your responsibility.
100%. I mean, listen, you can as testimony to where you just were, and dogs being completely free and wild to do whatever they want to do, and you seeing no incidents. If you had all the dogs in New York City who are owned by people and they were just running around, it would be mayhem.
Yeah.
You'd be like, it would be like, Night of the Living Dead. You'd be like, it would be like the birds. there's dogs attacking. It'd be awful.
The one thing in Turkey that was funny, like there was this outdoor restaurant, it was packed, and there was a dog there, and he was standing there and barking, but it was so funny because it was clearly not being aggressive at all.
Right, he's just
but
talking.
vocalizing,
he's just
looking around, barking. It's just
talking.
Yeah.
He's just like, listen, he's like, like, let me say my political opinion about what's going on today. I read the paper.
So, what are the advantages and disadvantages of a big dog versus a small dog?
That goes on your lifestyle. I'll give you my personal. I have, Chiquita's a little old now, but man, there's nothing more fun than like, I'm a fit dude running with my dog, like going like 4-mile runs. There's nothing more fun than having them pull you on a skateboard. I have little nieces and nephews, and I take Chiquita we take her to the Hamptons. They have like a pool there. They grab her by the tail and she pulls them along. Bigger dogs with kids, like, because they can be manhandled a lot more, and just the ease of training them, just because like physically you don't have to bend down. Like, they're asked to teach them a lot of things. They're physically easier to negotiate. There's not the dexterity needed. Like,
right.
There's that. And I just like cuddling with a big dog. I like wrestling with them. Like, I like playing rough with them. I like being like, I like being rough and
they
tumble.
love it.
Yeah, I would go camping in Joshua Tree with my pit bulls. They were off leash the whole time. There's coyotes out there. They're chasing rabbits and stuff. So I like, when we're going hiking, some of that terrain is treacherous, and they're just like, there's times they're jumping up. They're jumping on something ahead of me and kind of helping me pull up of a boulder. So that's my type of dog. I like big dogs. They're more fun. However, are
Chihuahuas dogs, or are they technically rats?
I don't know, man. There might be a hybrid.
They're awful, aren't they?
I have a lot of well, here's the other thing. Is like, Chihuahuas would not be a breed that I would want. But there's little dogs like that dog Arthur, who it's like the ease of taking him everywhere. He's so cool.
Yeah, but if you get a min pin, they're so much better than
No,
Chihuahuas.
I'm not talking about Chihuahuas. I'm talking about that little
I know,
dog
I'm just
Arthur.
saying. If you
Yeah.
want a
No,
Chihuahua,
I
get a
see your
min pin.
point. Some people like a Chihuahua. I think that to me they're a little fragile.
Yeah.
They're a little fragile. And
nasty.
I think there's dogs it should be illegal to breed. And I think there's so many. I think there's breeders that I'm like, my brothers have 2 English bulldogs, which it's insane that my brothers, like, they have, like, you have me and your family, and they just go ahead. They bought 2 English bulldogs. This poor thing, she can't breathe, she can't sleep. 4 surgeries. You're basically trying to correct genetic mutations that they've made. Now, I know people are going to go scream that English bulldogs, but like, listen,
thanks, Monsanto.
But there's responsible ways to, like, you can breed some of these traits into them without certain traits that are going to cause them to just have so many physical. They're miserable. Many of them.
My friend was dog sitting, not just a British bulldog, a miniature British bulldog. So it's even more fucked. And I'm like,
you live in the vet's office.
I'm like, let me take the dog for a walk. And I was running, and the dog was into it, but 5 feet, and and he couldn't breathe. And this dog wants to run, and it will never be able to run in his life.
Well, if you think about it like this, let's say people went away.
Yeah.
Right? And or the people in Turkey, right? You saw these dogs that kind of look like these generic sort of large mutt dogs. dogs wouldn't end up looking that way because dogs like that really they wouldn't be able to survive unless we were feeding them.
Right.
The way you were like that fish tank in a way.
Right.
So, and I don't, listen, English Bulldogs, the real English Bulldogs is, if you look up old English Bulldogs, they look like English Bulldogs, but they're taller and their snout
They
is
look more like
pronounced.
pit bulls.
They kind of look like a mix between a pit bull and like a English Bulldog. Those dogs are like, they're happy, they're healthy, they're okay. But to breed them into like, when people just overbreed, they're just like, you're making them so unhealthy.
Yeah.
They're so unhealthy.
Oh, Justin, thank you so much for coming in.
Yeah.
Book's called The Language of Dogs
Yeah.
and the No Disrespect podcast here on Gas Digital, which is hilarious.
Thank you.
And I will see you all next week. We got Anthony Cumia coming in here. You are welcome.